On October 7, 2019, Cape Coral, Florida, was rocked by a brutal double murder. Wade Wilson, a man with a chilling past, left a trail of terror and bloodshed. Join us as we uncover the dark details of his crimes, the relentless pursuit by detectives, and the crucial role played by his father, Steve Testasecca, in seeking justice for the victims, Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz. Stay tuned for an unforgettable journey into the mind of a killer.
It all began on October 7, 2019, a typical evening in Fort Myers, Florida. Wade Wilson, a 25-year-old with a troubled past, met Kristine Melton and her friend Stephanie Sailors at Bud Live, a popular bar. As the night wore on, Wilson ingratiated himself with the women, eventually accompanying them to the home of Jason Shepard, where they spent several hours. The next morning, they left, and the nightmare began. Wilson accompanied Melton to her Cape Coral home after Sailors left. Later that night, Wilson strangled Melton as she slept and stole her car. But his spree of violence was far from over. A short time later, Wilson encountered Diane Ruiz walking along a street in Cape Coral. He asked her for directions, luring her into the car. When Ruiz tried to escape, Wilson attacked, beating and strangling her, before pushing her out of the car and running her over repeatedly. The next day, the gruesome discoveries began. On October 8th, Kristine Melton's lifeless body was found in her home, sparking a frantic investigation. Hours later, Diane Ruiz's body was discovered in a wooded area, brutally beaten and repeatedly run over. The shocking brutality of the crimes left the community in fear and disbelief. Wilson's parents had been teenagers when his mother became pregnant, and he was eventually placed for adoption. At 18, Wilson reconnected with his biological father, Stephen Testasecca. Their relationship was sporadic, but on the day of the murders, Wilson reached out to his father multiple times, making chilling confessions. On the morning of October 7th, Wilson called his father, telling him, "I am a killer," Stephen, initially dismissing the call as a figment of Wilson's imagination, later realized the gravity of the situation when Wilson called again that night, describing the murders in gruesome detail. Stephen was horrified and torn, but knew he had to act. Stephen Testasecca, despite his initial reluctance, contacted the police, relaying the details of Wilson's confessions. The information provided critical leads, including Wilson's location. Detectives quickly mobilized, tracking Wilson's movements and piecing together the timeline of his crimes. On October 8th, Wilson was finally apprehended. His arrest brought the community a momentary sigh of relief, but the investigation was far from over. Detectives needed to build a solid case, gathering evidence and testimonies to ensure justice for the victims and their families. As the investigation unfolded, details of Wilson's violent past and troubled psyche emerged. He had a history of domestic violence, theft, and other criminal activities, painting a picture of a man spiraling out of control. His confessions to his father, recorded during their phone calls, provided chilling insights into his mind. Wilson showed no remorse during his confessions, describing his actions with a disturbing detachment. He relished in the details, wanting his father to understand the horror of his crimes. These confessions became crucial evidence, supporting the charges of first-degree murder, grand theft, battery, burglary, and petty theft. The investigation team worked tirelessly, interviewing witnesses, gathering forensic evidence, and building a case against Wilson. The community watched closely, their hearts heavy with grief and anticipation. The trial promised to be a significant step towards justice, but the road ahead was fraught with challenges. The trial of Wade Wilson began in 2024, 5 years after the murders that shocked Cape Coral. The courtroom was packed with family members, friends, and community members seeking justice for Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz. The prosecution, led by a determined team of attorneys, laid out the gruesome details of Wilson's crimes, presenting a mountain of evidence. Stephen Testasecca's testimony was pivotal. He recounted the chilling phone calls with his son, detailing Wilson's confessions and lack of remorse. His decision to contact the police and cooperate fully with the investigation was crucial in securing Wilson's arrest. The jury listened intently as Stephen described his horror and heartbreak, adding a human element to the cold, hard facts. The prosecution also presented forensic evidence linking Wilson to the crimes. Fingerprints, DNA samples, and fibers found on the victims matched those found in Wilson's car and home. Surveillance footage from the bar and nearby streets placed Wilson at the scenes of the crimes, creating an airtight case. Wilson's defense team attempted to argue that his confessions were coerced and that he was not in his right mind at the time of the murders. They painted a picture of a troubled young man with a history of mental illness, trying to garner sympathy from the jury. However, the overwhelming evidence and the graphic nature of Wilson's confessions made it difficult to sway the jurors. The trial lasted several weeks, with emotional testimonies from the victims' families. Kristine, Melton's sister, and Diane, Ruiz's son, spoke of their devastating loss, their voices breaking with grief. Their heartfelt words resonated with everyone in the courtroom, underscoring the human cost of Wilson's actions. Throughout the trial, detectives continued to investigate any remaining leads, ensuring no stone was left unturned. They uncovered more details about Wilson's past, including his involvement in other violent incidents and a failed escape attempt from jail in 2020. These revelations painted a picture of a dangerous individual who posed a significant threat to society. As the trial drew to a close, the jury was tasked with deciding Wilson's fate. After days of deliberation, they returned with a guilty verdict on all counts. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and sorrow as the verdict was read. Wilson showed no emotion, maintaining his cold, detached demeanor. The sentencing phase of the trial began, with the prosecution pushing for the death penalty. They argued that Wilson's heinous crimes and lack of remorse warranted the harshest punishment. The defense, meanwhile, pleaded for a life sentence, citing Wilson's troubled upbringing and mental health issues. After intense deliberations, the jury recommended the death penalty for Wade Wilson. On June 12, 2024, Judge Nicholas Thompson upheld the jury's recommendation, sentencing Wilson to death. The decision brought a sense of closure to the victims' families, though the pain of their loss would never fully heal. The trial's conclusion marked a significant victory for law enforcement and the community. Detectives were praised for their relentless pursuit of justice, their dedication ensuring that Wilson could no longer harm anyone else. The case also highlighted the importance of community vigilance and cooperation with law enforcement. With Wade Wilson sentenced to death, the focus shifted to the aftermath and the lasting impact on the community. The families of Kristine, Melton, and Diane Ruiz continued to grapple with their grief, finding solace in the fact that justice had been served. They established foundations in memory of their loved ones, advocating for victims' rights and supporting other families affected by violent crime. The case of Wade Wilson also sparked conversations about the importance of mental health resources and early intervention. Many wondered if Wilson's path could have been different with the right support and treatment. These discussions led to initiatives aimed at improving mental health services in the community, aiming to prevent future tragedies. As the community healed, the story of Kristine, Melton, and Diane Ruiz remained a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. Educational programs were introduced in schools, teaching students about personal safety and the dangers of trusting strangers. The legacy of the victims inspired positive change, turning tragedy into a catalyst for community growth. The documentary captures the essence of this journey, from the chilling discovery of the murders to the relentless pursuit of justice and the reflections on how to prevent such crimes in the future. It serves as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the power of a community united in the face of adversity. The final scenes of the documentary focus on the enduring impact of the case. Interviews with the victims' families, law enforcement officers, and community members highlight the lasting scars, but also the strength and solidarity that emerged from the tragedy. The viewers are left with a sense of hope, knowing that even in the darkest times, justice and positive change are possible. The story of Wade Wilson, the cold-blooded killer, and the relentless pursuit of justice for his victims, Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of community, vigilance, and the tireless efforts of law enforcement. It encourages viewers to stay engaged, support victims' rights, and work towards a safer, more just society. As the documentary concludes, it leaves viewers with a call to action. The fight against violent crime requires collective effort, from supporting mental health initiatives to advocating for stronger laws and enforcement. The story of Kristine and Diane, though deeply tragic, serves as a rallying cry for justice and change, inspiring others to continue the pursuit of truth and safety in their communities. Understanding the mind of Wade Wilson, the man behind the horrific murders of Kristine Melton and Diane Ruiz, requires a deep dive into his psychological profile. Born into a tumultuous environment, Wilson's early life was marked by instability and neglect. His biological parents were teenagers when he was born, leading to his eventual adoption. This early separation and subsequent adoption may have laid the groundwork for his troubled psyche. Wilson exhibited classic signs of antisocial personality disorder, characterized by a pervasive disregard for the rights of others, deceitfulness, impulsivity, irritability, and a lack of remorse. His criminal history, including domestic violence, theft, and other violent acts, paints a picture of a man who operated without a moral compass. His interactions were often manipulative and deceitful, aimed at achieving his own goals, regardless of the harm inflicted on others. The brutal nature of Wilson's crimes suggests a deep-seated aggression and a need for control. Strangling Kristine Melton in her sleep and running over Diane Ruiz repeatedly demonstrate not only a capacity for extreme violence, but also a desire to dominate and obliterate his victims completely. This level of brutality indicates a potential for psychopathy, where an individual exhibits extreme antisocial behavior, a lack of empathy, and egotistical traits. Wilson's relationship with his biological father, Stephen Testasecca, offers further insights. Reconnecting with his father at 18, Wilson's sporadic relationship with Stephen was fraught with tension. On the day of the murders, Wilson reached out to his father multiple times, making chilling confessions. This behavior could indicate a subconscious plea for validation or recognition, twisted by his pathological tendencies. During his confessions to his father, Wilson displayed a disturbing lack of remorse. He described his actions with a chilling detachment, indicating a profound disconnect from the emotional weight of his crimes. This emotional detachment is a hallmark of psychopathy, where the individual is incapable of forming genuine emotional bonds and lacks empathy for their victims. Wilson's history of domestic violence further underscores his need for power and control. His past relationships were marked by manipulation, coercion, and violence, revealing a pattern of behavior consistent with narcissistic traits. Narcissistic individuals often have an inflated sense of self-importance, a deep need for admiration, and a lack of empathy, all of which can drive them to commit heinous acts without remorse. The involvement of drugs and alcohol in Wilson's life cannot be overlooked. Substance abuse can exacerbate underlying psychological disorders, lowering inhibitions and increasing impulsivity. Wilson's drug use likely intensified his violent tendencies, contributing to the savagery of his crimes. During the trial, Wilson's defense attempted to argue that he was not in his right mind at the time of the murders, citing mental illness. However, the overwhelming evidence of his calculated actions and the chilling confessions made to his father painted a different picture. Wilson's behavior was not a result of a temporary lapse in sanity, but rather the manifestation of a deeply disturbed mind. The psychological analysis of Wade Wilson provides a harrowing glimpse into the mind of a killer. His life was marked by instability, violence, and a profound lack of empathy. Understanding his psyche helps to explain the brutal nature of his crimes and underscores the importance of early intervention and mental health support. While justice has been served, the tragic events orchestrated by Wilson remind us of the complex interplay between environment, psychology, and criminal behavior.